There we go. All right, so just giving people about another minute to hop on with us to go over eye anatomy. And we are going to be doing that because you have to know what you're looking at in an eyeball in order to understand iridology, right? It's just a given. If you don't understand the structure of the eye, then iridology makes no sense whatsoever. As we are just getting ready to get started here, again, I'm going to invite you, regardless of what platform you're joining me on, if you would please introduce yourself. Let me know who you are and where you're from, or even just where you're from. Just to begin a bit of a conversation, that would be fabulous. All righty. I think we are going to get started pretty quick here because I think people would like that. So again, weigh in whatever platform you're on. If you'll just pop into that chat box and give me a where you're from, just so that I know that I actually have people with me, that would be fabulous. I would love that. And we are going to get going. My name is Judith Cobb. I'm going to pop this around this way. There we go. My name is Judith Cobb. I'm a master herbalist, natural nutrition clinical practitioner, and a comprehensive certified iridology instructor. I've been in the wellness business as a coach, as a wellness coach for 40 years. You know, that's right? Old enough to have been in an industry for 40 years. I promise I'm not. And so in all those years, I've worked one-on-one with people, and I still do one-on-one clients, and I teach classes, have done all along. And in all those years, I've done iridology, but I've had a journey going through different styles of iridology until I was fortunate enough to learn constitutional iridology about 30 years ago. And that's where I've stayed with iridology because it is what makes sense. Now, for those of you who are practitioners and you're wondering about the idea of why would you want to add another modality to everything you already do? You know, if you do nutrition or herbology or Reiki or whatever, why would you want to add this? The answer for that is because this is probably the only modality that will help you unify everything you do. I was just speaking with a practitioner this morning, and she asked that exact question: why would I want to do this? She called me to ask about the program that I'm going to be teaching. I said, you want to do this because, then I asked her some questions, and those questions were, do you spend time outside of your client sessions creating protocols for your clients? She said, yeah. And I said, and how many hours unpaid are you spending for every one paid hour? And it was a couple. And I said, so how much do you charge an hour? And we settled on, it's probably $99. And I said, so you're really not earning $99 an hour. You're earning what, $33 an hour, right? Oh, yeah. So what if you could get your protocols, your programs all designed completely within your paid sessions, and it freed up those extra hours to see more clients? How will that impact your income? How will it impact your lifestyle? How much easier would that make it be to have your business? So when we look at iridology, that is really what we're looking at. We're looking at enhancing your business practice. And that is so important because, you know, that's just, you want to have a happy practice. You want to be happy what you're doing, right? At the end of this webinar, 3 things are going to happen. Count them, 3. Those 3 things are, I'm going to share with you the short version of the details of my upcoming course, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology. Second thing is, I'm going to give you a very special link that has a very special early registration tuition discount. And the third thing is, I'm going to give you a free download for 4 tips for being a more effective nutrition coach, herbalist, or a holistic health coach. So considering there's 3 great things happening towards the end of this webinar, you really want to commit to stay to the end, right? So if you are committed to staying with me to the end, I would love to see something in the chat box that says that you are going to stay. All right, you ready? Let's dive in. Here we go. Ta-da! There we go. So as we know, iridology photos are taken up close, really, really close, right? And we should not be able to see very much of the face as we are doing this. And knowing that, you're not going to see any of the facial features. You probably won't see the inner canthus. You probably won't see the outer canthus. And so the first thing that I want you to recognize is that the pupil is not in the center of the iris. Thank you for joining us on Instagram, Gem Essence. Good to have you there with us. And for those of you who are with us on Facebook and live on the webinar, Bob, hi, thanks for being on the webinar with us from Edmonton. And we know we've got people on Facebook as well who are lurking. And Bob says he's definitely staying to the end. Way to go. Thanks, Bob. When we look at an eye, the pupil is not in the exact center of the eye. Okay, because sometimes when you're looking at an eye photo, you don't know if it's a right or left, but yes, you do. You know it's a right or left because it's never in the center. The area, the span of iris that is the narrowest names the eye. So if the narrow side is to the right of the pupil, that is a right eye. If the narrow side is to the left of the pupil, that is a left eye. So the iris will always be slightly narrower on the side that is closest to the nose. Now, you probably didn't know that. That's one of those handy little things you can bring up at your next dinner, right? As you talk about things that amaze and astonish people. Let's do some good anatomy now, because this is really important. We're going to look at several sets of eyes for different reasons in this little presentation. And it's really important that you understand exactly what we are looking at here. When we look at the eye, we have the optic nerve. Okay, so the eyeball is actually the nerve ending of the optic nerve. This is the neural receptor for the optic nerve. And so that is a really important thing for us to know. This is the largest neural receptor in the body. It's a nerve ending that has this ball around it. The eyeball has two fluid-filled chambers. The first is the anterior chamber, and it's the small one, and the other one is the posterior chamber, which is really big. These are basically separated by the lens, and the lens is held in place by ligaments. Now, as iridologists, we don't do anything with or about the lens. We do a lot of things with the sclera and with the iris, right? And some things with the cornea. And love having people join us on Instagram. Thank you so much for being there. And on Facebook as well. Yeah, that's awesome. And we've got more people joining us on the live webinar too, so this is great. What we know about this front part of the eye is the pupil is actually a hole. It is an opening in the iris. So we've got iris and a gap and iris. So think of the iris as being like a donut, a squished donut in the eye. And the hole in the middle of the donut is the pupil. The entire eyeball is encased in a tough membrane that is made up of two parts. The largest part is the sclera, or the white of the eye. And the sclera is really, really tough, and it actually continues down around the optic nerve to protect the nerve. This nerve is so important. The smaller part of this is at the front, and this is the cornea. So where most of the sclera is white, at the very front, the sclera becomes clear, and we call that the cornea. And this needs to be clear because it's directly in front of the pupil. If this was opaque, no images could go through this, through the lens, to get flipped upside down and refracted on the back of the eyeball. The optic nerve exits the back of the eyeball, and it splits into two nerve pathways. So each eye has two nerve pathways, and this is what gives us true depth perception and binocular vision. And with those pathways, one pathway stays on the same side of the brain. So if we're talking about the right eye, one pathway stays on the right side, but the other pathway crosses over to the left side. So right there in the middle of your head, you've got a place where these nerve pathways cross over. Okay. And this again is exactly what allows us to have depth perception. And that place where these cross over is called the optic chiasm. The optic chiasm. When we look at a cross section of the eye, now I want you to consider that this is loading very slowly. That's kind of frustrating. There we go. This is one side of the iris. So remember we talked about the iris as being like a donut that had been squished and it has the hole in the middle that's called the pupil. So this is as if we've taken a part of that, we've cut that donut in half, and now we're looking at the side of one of those cuts, okay? So this is a side of one of those edges of the iris. And so what we've got here is this very frontmost layer. This is the part that is facing outward. This is all the cut edge, and this is facing into the eyeball, back into the eyeball. So this is the layer that you actually see. And there is one layer in front of that that is not iris, and that of course is the cornea. So the cornea is up here. And then we have that fluid-filled chamber right here. And then we have the anterior border layer. This is the layer that actually holds the eye pigment. This holds the eye pigment. So if we are looking at a blue eye, there's very little pigment in here. If we are looking at a dark brown eye, there's a lot of pigment. Now, both of those eyes have to use the same kind of pigments. It's just that the blue eye has very little and the brown eye has a lot. So that is a huge difference between the blue and the brown, and it's just the density or the amount of pigment that is in the eye. So again, the blue eye has very sparse pigment, while the dark brown eye has very dense pigment. Then when we're talking about all of the stuff that's in here, this is what we collectively call the stroma. The stroma is made up of individual fibers that we call trabeculae. And we're going to look at some images of that in a minute to understand what a trabecula really looks like. We also, in the stroma, have things like blood vessels and nerve endings and muscle fibers of different kinds, because this is a very active tissue. Lots of stuff going on in here. We also have the posterior epithelium. The posterior epithelium, which is two layers of cells, count them two, that are very, very dark brown. They look almost black when you do a dissection of the eye. In here, we also have a posterior membrane that is also called the dilator muscle. The dilator muscle. So we're actually going to look at how the sphincter muscle shows up in the eye and describe how the dilator muscle and the sphincter muscle work together in just a moment. So again, we have the two very dark brown or black layers of cells here that create the posterior epithelium. They wrap around the inner edge of the iris, so the pupil is sitting right over here. Right? So we've got these wrapping around that inner edge, and it's really important to remember that as we have separations in the stroma and we look further and further towards the back of the eye, we're looking deep into the eye tissue, we may actually, if that is deep enough, see the posterior epithelium. This edge is also, when it gets over here, creates what we sometimes can see and what we describe as the inner pupillary border. All right, so let's have a look at some eyeballs. And my computer seems to be wanting to load very slowly tonight, and I do not know why it's doing that. or this afternoon. There we go. Perfect. Okay. So for those of you who are with me on Instagram, I'm going to be moving my camera closer to my computer screen so you can see what I'm talking about. So when we look at an iris, we are actually looking at layers here. We've got lots of layers going on in this eye, for instance. When we see a part of the eye that has really dark shading where there's a separation in the fibers, again, that's showing you, it's like looking down into a crevasse if you've ever been on an ice field or in the mountains or whatever, and you've looked down into that crevasse and you see how deep it is. You're looking down at a crack between things to see the depth. And when we have this kind of shading, that's exactly what we can see there, is that kind of the depth. So we know there are layers to this. Now the iris is not really thick. It's not like a ½ inch thick or anything like that. So the layers are very fine, very tiny. And as we look at this eye, we also see individual fibers or threads. Those are called trabecula. Each one is a trabecula. And we have layers of these trabecula, a few layers anyways, stacked up in the iris. And that, when those trabeculae all separate in the same place, that's when we are looking down into the depth of the eye tissue. All right, and if you noticed back here on this diagram, we also had what we were calling contraction furrows, which is where the surface takes a little dip. When we look at an iris, you can see those dips. That would be right here and right here, right? So we've got those contraction furrows happening there. I'm going to see if I can separate my notes off again. And we are reloading, and hopefully this will work. Yes, go us. So there we go. Again, we can see here that we've got layers. Can you see that some of these fibers in this lovely blue eye look like they've been laid on top of the eye, almost like someone took craft yarn and laid it on top of the eye? Yeah, we really have a three-dimensional effect here because the iris is 3D. It has width, depth, and height. On this bottom image, what we are looking at, this white ring, is actually not in the iris at all. It is in the cornea. This is in, remember we talked about the cornea, the clear layer that's in front of the pupil and the iris? That milky ring is in the cornea. It's in the very top layer. So we can see that that iris and the cornea, that the front surfaces of the eye are very three-dimensional. And we need to be aware of all of those. And everything is loading painfully slowly. There we go. We'll get the next one coming up. Oh my goodness, that skipped one. I do so love tech when it works. There we go. Mentioned earlier that we were going to be looking at the different muscles in the eye. And so we've got in the eye two specific sets of muscles, the sphincter muscle and the dilator muscle. When we look at the sphincter muscle, this is a muscle that is in a circular fashion. The fibers go around the perimeter of the pupil. And so that means that when this muscle contracts, that it actually goes like this, so that the pupil gets smaller. So that's the sphincter muscle. That is what constricts the pupil. Now, as you know, with muscles, they only on their own can contract. They cannot stretch out again. There has to be an opposing force that makes that muscle stretch out. And that's where the dilator muscle comes in, because the dilator muscle is anchored to the outer edge of the sphincter muscle, and it is anchored at the outer edge of the iris. So this is the entire eyeball. This is just the iris. So when this dilator muscle contracts, what happens, because the outer edge is anchored into your sclera, the inner edge is the part that moves. So when this contracts, this inner edge moves this way, and that is what pulls the sphincter muscle open again to dilate the pupil. Make sense? Yeah? And Dawn is saying all internet is very slow today. It's probably from all the online shopping, right? Everyone's out there spending money online. Yeah, which is a little bit crazy, but that's how it is today. I guess that's more tomorrow. I guess today is pre-Black Friday, isn't it? Yeah. So let's look at what that looks like in a real eye. On this eye, you can clearly see right in here that there is an edge. Can you see that there's a different color ring, a wreath or a halo? I could call it the pom-pom zone. That's a highly technical term. Right in here. This is actually showing you where the edge of the sphincter muscle is. That is the edge of what is going to, when it contracts, constrict the pupil. Right. The rest of this from there to there is the dilator muscle, and it's when these fibers contract that they pull on the edge of the sphincter muscle and open up the pupil again. Now it looks on here like, oh, well, these fibers actually don't go around, they radiate out. These fibers that we are looking at in the eye are not the actual muscle fibers. These are the trabecula of the eye. The muscle fibers are down a few layers behind what we can see, but we can see the edge of where they end poking through. So what about fiber direction in the eye? Let's just pop back to that other image for just a half a second here. Because when we look at this, these are all trabeculae. We often refer to them as fibers as well. When we talk about fiber structure, we're talking about how the fiber is sitting in the eye. So when we look at fiber direction, everything inside the collarette, let's go back one more time. This is called the collarette. Okay. Everything inside the collarette originates and ends at the inner pupillary border. So we have one edge, one end here, it goes up, makes a hairpin turn, comes back. That is one fiber, one fiber. In the rest of the eye, outside the collarette, it anchors in at the edge of the iris, comes into towards the collarette, does a hairpin turn, and goes back out again. So what we know is that from the edge to the collarette, from the edge to the collarette is arterial blood flow, because these trabeculae are actually capillaries. They're actually very fine capillaries. And from where it turns going back to the limbus, where it turns going back to the inner pupillary border, that is arterial, or sorry, that is venous flow. Now, the reason that these blood vessels don't usually appear red, because they are capillaries, is because they have a collagen coating. And that collagen coating makes them appear white. So when we are looking at this, we need to remember that constitutional iridology studies the patterns of the fiber and the structure and the base color and the surface pigment. And as iridologists, we use that information to help us understand the inherent predispositions that our client has. We aren't using this to say this is your current health condition. We're looking at 3 to 4 generations of information when we look at the iris. And so the person may or may not have an actual obvious problem in an area where we see a marking in an eye, but they've got an inherent predisposition, and so we need to ask about that. Constitutional iridologists never do an assessment without background information, because we are constitutional. We are not crystal ball iridologists. We need the background information. This is not a party game. This is not, it's not a crystal ball. This is an assessment, and we need to have a conversation with our client about what we are seeing in their eye. We let the eyes guide us as to what questions we ask. So here we have another iris, and this again is showing you, I'm trying to find the best place to put my camera for my Instagram people. This again is showing you the depth, the layers. This is a beautiful eye for showing layers. Can you see how these fibers look like they're laid on top? Like here's the iris, here's those other fibers right up on top. But you can then see in some of these openings, you can see layers of fiber that are lower and even lower in the eye. So the eye is very, very three-dimensional. And the depth that we see gives us information. The colors we see give us information. The different types of markings we see gives us information. And this is all to guide us in what questions to ask so we can create the best programs for our clients. So with that, I'd like to introduce you to the upcoming program, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology. Now, what I'm sharing with you today has only been shared with my email list and in my private Iridology Education Facebook group. So you are getting a sneak peek. This is and what you're seeing now is actually an exclusive offer because things will be changing on December 1st when I open registration up to the public. So Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology is a 40-hour live webinar course, 20 classes, 2 hours apiece, that teaches iridology, constitutional iridology, at a level that will prepare you with the right curriculum to become certified by the International Iridology Practitioners Association if you so choose. The course itself starts on January 15th. Classes run from 5 till 7 p.m. Mountain, not daylight, Mountain Standard Time. And the sneak peek priority registration is open right now at iridology.education/priority. But let's do a little case study before we dive into more about the upcoming course. This is when it comes up. These are the eyes of a client of mine who's in her mid-30s, fertility issues, trying to get pregnant for the last couple of years. And in that time, she had conceived once and had a miscarriage. Now, as you look at this, I again want you to look for layers. Can you see the layers in the eye? Can you see how the collarette looks like it's sitting right on top of the eye surface? Can you see how we are looking into the depth of the eye in these areas where we've got shading? And then I've done a cutaway that's an expanded version because I want to show you, can you see the contraction furrows? So we see all the convolutions and all the texture that makes up the iris. And we understand as we look at that many things about this person. So these eyes specifically suggest that this person probably has an inherent predisposition, a personal or family history of the MTHFR defect. And if you know anything about MTHFR, it makes fertility a huge challenge. There are things in this eye as well that tell us this person probably burns through her B vitamins, vitamin C, calcium, and magnesium very quickly. We have markings in this eye that suggest her liver may be inefficient. When we put all of those things together, we begin to understand why she is probably having fertility issues. Now, is that the only conclusion we could come to? No. But we come to those conclusions of understanding why fertility is a challenge for her because she has said fertility is a challenge. So she has a challenge. Why? We look at the eyes, we understand more of the why. You'll see also particularly in the blown up version, and I hope this comes across well on Instagram, that the eye is a little bit foggy here. It's like there's a layer of white glue that's almost dried right in here. And that suggests to us that she probably she probably has a bit of a liver enzyme insufficiency and therefore doesn't metabolize her carbohydrates very well. So the question that I had to ask her when I saw that was, do you crave carbohydrates? And she said yes. Well, that really goes along with a lot of the fertility challenges, right? Because that is often a part of polycystic ovarian syndrome, which I suspect she had because before she came to see me, she had done some dietary work on her own and had taken her cycles from 90 days down to 30 odd days, which is amazing. And that's how we always work with that first, is with nutrition anyways. So she has done a great job. But we then began to understand that there was probably that underlying MTHFR thing that we needed to work on with her as well. You know, she's got a lot of different marks in her eyes. And we are not actually going to talk about all of them today, nor would we ever vomit all of that all over our client. When we are with the client, we only want to really be talking about the markings that are relevant to the immediate here and now. As an iridologist with nutrition and herbal background, you can certainly have your brain going, and you can be thinking, yeah, this, yeah, that, and putting things together, but never, ever fire hose your client with everything you've got. That is the fastest way to scare them off. So the Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology course is a live, online mentored course for nutritionists, herbalists, and naturopaths who want to streamline their clinical work without sacrificing client care. Because as holistic practitioners, we really pride ourselves in taking exceptional care, really individualized care of our clients, don't we? We want our clients to have that holistic approach, which means that human-to-human contact. I teach this course because I want these practitioners to be able to offer that kind of care. And I want them to stop working unpaid overtime developing their client programs. I want them to stop overwhelming their clients with those undoable programs. I want them to create programs that will increase client compliance, success, and long-term retention. How would you feel if you had clients that were still coming back to you 5 years later, 10 years later, 15 years later? I've got clients that still come back to me 35 years after they started. Just saying. So the goal here is to teach you constitutional iridology and how to use it confidently, because knowing iridology and knowing how to use it are two very different things, so that you can easily integrate what you already know about nutrition and herbology to confidently create doable client programs right in your paid client sessions. No more unpaid homework for you. Here's how we do that. We use 20 2-hour-long live webinars. And again, this contains all the curriculum you need to sit for the IPA certification exam if you choose to do that. We have lots of time in class for mentoring, for asking questions, for getting answers to your questions. And we have lots of time to discuss things. And you can also access all of the materials online for the lifetime of the program. We'll do a little more detail on that in just a moment. Here's what it's worth. It's worth $23.95. But you know what? That's not all. Here's what you get in the program. Lesson 1 is the introduction to iridology, the history and anatomy, which we've done some of today. Lessons 2 through 5 are all about the color and the pigments, because that is what creates the constitutions, the subtypes, and the freckles, as some people call them, in the eyes. And when we understand that, we understand so much about how this body is put together and what the likely interactions are. Lessons 6 through 8, we talk about fiber variations and lacunae. That adds another layer to our assessment. Lessons 9 through 16, we talk about different zones in the eyes. Now, these zones, again, help us to understand how the body works on the organ level, on the bone level, on the blood and surface lymph and the core and surface lymph, and on the surface detox levels. Lesson 17, we talk about how the eyes change. The eyes can change, but not in the way that most of these before and after pictures on the internet are showing. And we'll talk about why those pictures are inaccurate. Lessons 18 and 19 are sclerology, so we actually learn about the whites of the eye. Lesson 20 is our wrap up. I know a lot of the words that we've talked about today really don't mean a lot to you just yet, but that's okay, because they're all a part of the course, and that's part of what we teach in the course. You learn the language, you learn what it means, you learn how to use it, you learn how to integrate it with your nutrition training or your herbal training, and by the end of the course, you're going to be amazed at how those terms just roll off your tongue and how confident you are in what you are doing with the iridology. This course is so jam-packed with learning and value that even at just the halfway mark, most of my students are going, how much more is there? And it's okay, because we've got time and they do learn it all just like you will. So here's what you get. You get your 22-hour-long live webinars at a value of $23.95. Now, I want you to think for a minute, if you were to go somewhere and do a 40-hour face-to-face class, so you're taking 5 or 6 days off work to travel there, to do the course, to pay for hotel and meals and ground transportation, take a week off work, what is that going to cost you? Well, most of these courses are in the US, not all, but most, the vast majority, or in other places, more far-flung than that. And you're going to find that to do a course away from home is going to cost you in overhead expenses probably easily $3,000 to $4,000. And that's not covering your tuition. When you go online, you're going to find that there are other IPA certified instructors like me teaching live face-to-face classes. Their tuition ranges from $750 to about $1,500 US. I want you to notice along with that mine is in Canadian dollars. We'll talk about those exotic Canadian dollars in just a few moments. Let's look at some of what some of my students have said, because it's really important that you understand that this course works. This is Sharon Bimrose. She came to me already with iridology under her belt. She had studied it as a part of her naturopathy training. But she said, Judith's course, Confident Nutritionist Dynamic Iridology, surpassed my previous training in structure, content, delivery, documentation, and support. Awesome. And she goes on to say that it saves her time in her practice. Yes. And that it's been a huge game changer to her practice. She used to spend 2 to 4 hours after a client session writing up an iridology report to email to the client. She doesn't do that anymore. Helen Murdoch had just finished her coursework, and she commented she came in with no iridology training prior to the course, and she said, what a great educational experience. Thank you, Judith. Yes. Michelle Davies came to me really well trained already. She already had done David Pesick's level 1, 2, and 3 iridology, and Darko Peirce, his iridology and professional practice course. But this is what Michelle said. She said, most importantly, my course taught her how to put it all together and make a proper assessment. My opinion, it makes no sense to learn a new modality if you're not taught how to implement it. And we do a lot of implementation in my program. Stephanie came to me, and this is what she said. She has a master's in education. Keep that in the back of your mind. I have several books on iridology, and I tried to teach myself and spent hours online on YouTube watching various portions of classes and presentations. They were so conflicting and confusing and overwhelming. I told my husband, this is beyond me. I'm not getting this at all. I was doing internet searches and kept hearing conflicting things. I kept searching on the internet, and I stumbled across your YouTube channel and thought, oh my, this person knows how to teach. That was my introduction to a very reasonable approach, one that resonated with me. So she really appreciated the teaching. She's finished the course, and now she's working on her certification levels. So does that sound amazing? I want to see in the chat box in the comments, what would success look like to you? If money wasn't an option and you could create the kind of success you want in your business, what would it look like? What would it look like? Karen Choate came to me. She also had no iridology training prior to the course. She is now certified. Her specialty as a CNHP is gut health. And she says this specifically: iridology has helped me to understand the relationships between different organs and organ systems more in depth. Iridology also gives me an advantage of seeing the potential for different genetic traits and qualities that may be underlying. By observing the constitution, for example, you can extrapolate how the person's body will likely respond to applications of healing methods. Therefore, it has helped me to expand my knowledge and increase my efficiency at providing more precise recommendations for health-oriented options. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So what else do you get? Well, in this course, you get video recordings of every class. You get topic recordings for every lesson. So if you miss a lesson, no problem. If you're sick or maybe you're traveling and you're on a nice vacation and you don't want to interrupt that to take a class, that's okay. It's all recorded. It's all posted on a student website for you to access when you're able. And those, because you're getting the course pretty much twice over, each of those is worth $23.95. So the total value of the course is $71.85 Canadian dollars. Now, this course includes an amazing amount of mentoring, both during the course and for the long term, as you will see in a moment. And so, could it possibly be worth $71.85? Yeah, it could. Worth every penny. But what is the actual investment? Now, I know when I was looking for solutions to solving some of my problems in my practice many years ago, admittedly, it was like 30 years ago when $7,185 was a lot. That was like mortgage payments for 7 or 8 months in the house we were living in back then. I would have freaked, but I also probably would have done it because I was so desperate to find an answer. But what I've done instead is create a tuition that I think is a much more reasonable investment, and I think you'll agree with me. You can do the course for $529 Canadian as 5 monthly payments, so 5 payments of $529, or you can do it as one payment of $23.95 Canadian. Those of you who are in Canada are breathing a sigh of relief that those aren't US dollars, and those of you in the US are probably thinking, what the heck is she talking about? We'll do the dollar conversion in just a moment. The course start date is Wednesday, January 15th. And course runs 5 till 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So you can see the different time zones across North America, Pacific, Central, Eastern. If you're in London, England, the Greenwich Mean Time, sorry, midnight's not a great time for you, but everything is recorded. So if that works, or if you're in Australia, 11 a.m. the next day. If you want to hop on over to registration while we're talking, go to iridology.education/priority1. Now, Christmas is coming, and this isn't really meant to be a Black Friday promotion, but it's just conveniently positioned right there. And it's going to last for a little longer than just today and tomorrow. You've got until December 6th, but I would suggest not waiting because space is limited to 10 students maximum. But what I decided to do was give you an early Christmas gift. And that would mean that until Friday, December 6th at 9 p.m., if you get registered, $449 times 5 payments, or $19.95 in one payment. And I think it's Sue Turton says, I'd like a busy clinic that presents me with the opportunity to learn. There you go. Yeah. Well, this course will give you the opportunity to learn, and we will look at thousands of eyes in the scope of this practice. So you want to get in early, and you want to get in on my little Christmas promotion that's not going to come around again. 5 payments of $449 or 1 payment of $19.95. So for those of you who are, oops, I did not mean to do that. Let's just change that screen. There we go. For those of you, I didn't mean to do that either. It has been a technologically challenging day. I am extremely human and it's showing really well today. So for those of you who don't know anything about Canadian dollars, 1995 Canadian, if you're in the States and you go and pay that through your pay portal, will come out to be about $15.50 US. You're liking that, right? If you're in Australia, you're so glad you're not paying in American dollars because that gap is huge. But because it's Canadian dollars, 1995 comes out to be about 22.65 Australian dollars. If you are in Britain, in the UK, this is about 1,200 British pounds sterling, BPS. So you can see that charging in Canadian dollars is just the friendliest thing to do, right? Makes it more affordable for everyone. Absolutely. Iridology.education/priority1. You gotta love Canadian dollars. So what else you get in the class to make it really worth $19.95? You get a digital downloadable textbook. Most teachers make you buy your own. The most popular textbooks out there are running for $250 US. I've developed a 200-page full-color digital textbook. I include it as a bonus. It's worth $250. You get it as a bonus in the class. Most teachers make you buy the Iridology map. I include the one I developed, digital downloadable, $25 value, yours as a bonus in the course. Cheat sheets. You know, when I went to school, we had Cole's Notes. I know some of you have had Cliff's Notes, so it's the synoptic version, the condensed version of the course. That's what the cheat sheets are. All of the curriculum condensed into about 45 pages of charts and graphs. Super easy to use. I know of no other teacher who has created cheat sheets. $175 Canadian value, yours as a bonus in the course. Now this is big. This is huge. Private Facebook group and office hours calls. $10,000 Canadian each. And you're thinking, what the heck? And I'm thinking, yeah. And the reason I say that is because when you take most courses, when you finish the course, if they've got online support like office hours or Facebook, they kick you out. Right? You finish the course, done. Don't want to talk to you again. That is not how I view this. I want to create a strong community of constitutional iridologists. So when you finish the course, whether you've certified or not, you are welcome to continue hanging out with us in our private Facebook group. So if you've got questions that you need answers to, post them there. If you've got eye pictures you want us to look at and weigh in on, post them there. The office hours calls, we do those twice a month currently. And again, students submit iPhotos for us to discuss, cases they want us to discuss. Sometimes I'll come up with something off the wall that I want to talk about. These again, typically are an hour to 2 hours a piece, twice a month. And it's a way to continue the training, continue the support. You don't get kicked out. You'd get kicked out if you were obnoxious. But I attract the nicest people into my class. So if you're a nice person, you can go ahead and register at iridology.education/priority1. What else do we have? You get recordings of the office hours stored on your student site for 18 months. So we don't store them forever, but you can go back 18 months. And my students love going back and listening to the office hours calls from before they actually started their program. Now, here's a big one. Here's a big one. In order to actually do the IPA certification process, you need to have an IPA student membership, which is your responsibility to purchase. But the mentoring, the exam mentoring, most teachers charge separately for this because it's labor intensive. It's about 10 hours of time that the teacher has to devote to the one student. So exam one is I provide you with 10 sets of eyes and you do written evaluations. You send them back to me. I mark them. It's going to take me about 10 hours to mark them. And then you and I meet privately on a Zoom call. so that we can go over where you maybe need more support, what you're doing really well, what I'd like to see more of, that kind of stuff. When you and I agree that you are rock solid at that level, then we get the IPA exam 2, which is a case that IPA gives to us. I forward that to you. You do it as an assessment. You send it back to me. I take an hour to mark it, and then you and I meet on a private Zoom call again to go over that. When you and I both agree that you are rock solid and ready to roll, then I let IPA know that you are ready. You go on the IPA website and you register for the exam and pay the exam fee to IPA, and then you are set to do the online exam to work towards your final certification. You do also need 1 year of a college level anatomy and physiology course and proof of completing that with a percentage grade or something other than a pass-fail, right? But here what I'm really saying is that these are a bonus. If you decide you want to certify, I will help you prepare by mentoring you for the exams. So all told, the bonuses alone are worth $28,907. The entire course, including your tuition, is actually worth $31,302. Huge, absolutely huge. Laura Orvieto says, I highly recommend this course. I'm still studying herbology and nutrition, and Confident Nutrition Dynamic Iridology is helping me to integrate everything I'm learning. I feel so blessed to have found this course. So once again, the tuition, 5 payments of $449, or 1 payment of $19.95, and that is only good until Friday, December 6th, or until all the seats are filled. When all the seats are filled, registration will be closed. Some questions people often ask: is this a self-paced course or correspondence course or self-learning? The answer is absolutely not. This is a live course online, fully taught live, but it has a lot of extra online support. You will start with a group of students, work through the program with that group of students, complete the coursework with that group of students, and then your certification work happens on its own pace. But I do insist that you finish all of your certification work within 10 months of completing the actual classes. How long will it take me to go through the entire course? Well, obviously 20 weeks minimum to do the classwork, and then again up to 10 months to do the certification. I found that if people take more than 10 months, they don't certify. So I like to hold their feet to their fire and support them in that process so they can get it done. How much time per week do you need to set aside to complete the program? Well, obviously 2 hours per week for the class itself. And then I suggest 2 to 3 hours per week beyond that, looking at live eyeballs and studying, getting this under your belt. I'm going to be out of town next month. Will I fall too far behind? Nope. Because your only excuse for not catching up would be if you're on a beach and you don't want to get sand in your computer, right? So out of town, that's okay. Everything is recorded for you. So once your class has been held for that week, give me 24 hours to get it rendered and loaded to your student site, and then you can catch up at your, I'd say at your leisure, but get it done before the next class, right? How do I know if this course is right for me? If you're a nutritionist, a herbalist, or a naturopath, if you spend time outside of client paid hours developing programs, or if your appointments are always going overtime, if you're looking for a proven way to quickly assess your client's needs, this course is for you. If you're looking for a course that's taught by someone who's been there, done that, struggled to have a successful business, and now knows how to have a successful business, then that is for you. And it looks like I'm out of time on my Facebook Live or my Instagram Live. Darn. When will you know enough to start using what you've learned? By the end of the second lesson, I expect that you will start studying and practicing your constitutions, because you're going to learn your constitutions in week 2. And if you wait until further on in the class to start practicing what you've learned, you're going to get snowballed. What else do you need to buy for this course? A 5 to 10 power magnifying glass, a pen light and a lighted magnifier, and approximately a week or two before the class starts, I always go on to Amazon, find examples of the kinds of equipment that would be great, post it on the Facebook page, and then you can either get what I've recommended or you can go and check Walmart or Staples or Target or whatever to buy them there. If you don't like it, can you get a refund? I don't offer refunds. This is a certification course for professionals. As such, refunds are not available. If, however, life happens, something gets in the way, and we need to rejig something for you, just give me a call, reach out to me, and we'll see if we can find another plan for you. Maybe it's putting you into the next course start date, or something like that. But there's usually something that we can work out because we don't give refunds. So what comes next? Go to iridology.education/priority1. Choose the payment option that works for you, the 1-pay or the 5-pay. After paying, you're actually going to receive not one email, but 2 emails. One that says, congratulations, you're in, and one that has an email link to your enrollment contract. Complete that contract online, hit submit. As soon as I've received that, that gives me all the information I need to finish your registration process. Within 1 business day, usually, I'm on top of that, and I've got those sent off to you so that you will receive your log-on for the Zoom meetings, your student site log-on, and your Facebook group invitation. So as promised, I promised you that there would be a download. And this is stuff, content, information to help you start streamlining your practice right now. And I'm just going to hope that this is going to let me do this without crashing my computer again. There we go. There's the link posted into the chat box of the webinar. And for those of you who are on Facebook, bit.ly/4-keys-2-better-client-appointments. I apologize that's so long, but it works. Okay, so go to that link and download that, and that will give you some more good information for helping to get your business more streamlined while you're waiting for the course to begin. If you're feeling a little jittery or a little anxious or maybe a little scared as you're contemplating signing up for this class, I want you to think of the last really major decision you made. Did you feel any of those emotions there? A little anxious, a little jittery, a little excited? That's how you should feel if this is the right decision for you. So again, I invite you, if you're feeling that bit of jitter, hop on over to iridology.education/priority1 and get yourself registered. And certainly if there's any tech issues, and I don't think there will be, I've spent weeks ironing out the kinks, do reach out to me at judith@cobblestonehealth.com. Otherwise, I will just be celebrating when I see your registration come in. Thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate that. I hope that you have learned a little bit about eye anatomy. And again, iridology.education/priority1 to get registered for the class at the early sneak a peek registration price, and while there are still seats available. Thanks so much, and I will talk to you later. Bye for now.